first brewery I worked at was Cloudburst Brewing Company in Portland, Maine. The summer between my junior and senior years of college. I was going to school up in Maine and decided to spend the summer in Portland with no real plans, so I found myself doing a bunch of odd jobs and drinking a whole lot of Allagash Whites, but nothing I was super passionate about. And so on a flyer, I decided to walk into the brewery and see if they had any summer work, and they did. And so they kind of hired me on the spot just to sweep floors and put bottles into boxes and tape boxes, and I got to mill some grain at the end of the summer, but pretty much the lowest person on the totem pole of doing everything that nobody else wanted to do for the most part. I mean, I guess after working at so many breweries, you learn a lot of what to do and that there are different ways to do things the right way, but there are even more ways to do things the wrong way. When I moved out west and we settled in Seattle, I had emailed Dick a couple times for positions at Elysian, and he never responded to any of my emails. So I took a head brewing job at Rogue's Issaquah brew house spot. And then shortly after, a friend who I had brewed with at Allagash had moved back home to Seattle, and he was working at Elysian Capitol Hill, and kind of slowly put the word into Dick's ear about, if we're ever looking for anybody else, I know a guy, which ended up being a drunken job offer 9 months later by Dick at the Washington Brewers Cask Festival. In between sessions, we were drinking beers and eating pizza, and he said, "Oh, I think I can find a position for you." And I was like, "Cool, I'm going to hold you to this drunken job offer right now. I'm going to call you on Monday." And so within a month or so, I was at Elysian, and Elysian Fields was the position, so it was more of that experimental creative role at that little 8-barrel system down by the stadiums. We kind of, we had heard rumors of that sale, and at first a few of us didn't believe it. We were like, there's no way that would ever happen. And so, but as those rumors never really died down, we ended up finding out shortly before. A few of us found out about a week or so before the official announcement, and there was a lot of shock and sadness. And I don't blame any three of those top guys for making the decisions they did. They all have different reasons, and you could kind of see that those three founding owners of Elysian were all moving in different directions many years before that sale. And so something was going to have to come to a head, because 15 years is a long time for three people to jockey position, running a growing company like that. And so when that sale was announced, and I was in the process, I was still raising capital for this project. And I think a lot of brewers, there's not a lot of brewers opening breweries because we don't get paid really anything. And so it's one of those situations where you've learned all of the skills to make beer and to run the production end, and I figured I could figure out the business side of things. That as long as the beer was the first priority, everything else should kind of take care of itself. And we still are kind of that way where, I'm paying attention to the beer first, and I will always kind of consider myself as a brewer and not like a business owner or an entrepreneur or anything like that. Like, I make beer, and everything else is kind of falls into place because we are trying to make the best beer that we possibly can. I have no savings. I've never made more than $40,000 a year in my life. How can I raise a $250,000 to start a brewery. It's like I have nothing except I know how to do all. I know how to make beer. And so, a lot of like networking and friends of friends, and there were 3 or 4 degrees of separation of people that slowly I got to get on board, and a lot of it was because of the recipes at Elysian that I could point to and say, have you had these beers? I made those beers, and that without that I would never have gotten enough funds to open a brewery, while still retaining majority ownership too, because talking to other brewery owners in this town and then seeing kind of what went down at Elysian, I knew that I needed just to give myself breathing room. I wanted to retain roughly 60% ownership, and I did. I got that. I got that to happen so that it was just going to be me making all these decisions and not having to really make any compromises. I see this industry trending more towards the hyperlocal, area that there's great beer made in almost every city in the United States right now. And, Seattle beer doesn't have to be, people don't need this beer in Idaho. They don't need this beer in Oklahoma. Like there's great beer in Idaho, there's great beer in Oklahoma. So it's less and less so of that growth, and as people are more aware of this industry, the more that they want to support, their local companies in their own state and in their own city. And so, but at some point, I think people are going to be focusing more on that aspect, and I think people have. I mean, just not overreaching and not chasing sales, and that's kind of that's the way that we're designed, so that if kind of craft beer growth starts to hit a wall and decline, I think that we're well insulated enough to bear that, because we're not overextended as far as our reach, as far as where the beer goes. I mean, we're thankful that Seattle has so many bars and restaurants that I don't think we could ever be in even close to a majority of every bar and restaurant in this city. So, we're kind of, we certainly benefit a little bit more than other places by being in Seattle, and being in such a craft, small, local, conscious-minded city. So yeah, I mean, I guess then getting onto that, are there sizes that I think are too big and are vulnerable? Yes, there are certain sizes, and if you look at all those past acquisitions of what ABI is buying and SAB Miller, a lot of those breweries are around the same size per volume that they're purchasing, and that's because you get to this 30 to 60,000 barrel of beer a year, where you have lots of employees, you have to put a lot more resources into packaging, into distribution, that things just get thinner and thinner, margins get thinner and thinner, and you can either then choose to scale back. It's harder to kind of scale back than to keep going forward, and a lot of those guys see a way out of, well, if we sell this, it's not necessarily our problem. We don't have to take out more money to invest in growing this much more to kind of keep ourselves flatlining.